Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Powerful on Purpose podcast, where we talk to amazing women who are using their stories to build businesses and, just as importantly, impact the world for good. And today, super excited to introduce my guest, Dr. Alena Candova, because honestly, she's like catnip. Anybody who loves neuroscience, right? When I saw her description, because she's a subconscious reprogramming and neurocognitive specialist, I was like, now that I got to get me some. And she is also an author. So Dr. Alena guides people in integrating neuroscience, subconscious pattern work, and somatic integration. Her work focuses on inner authority and self-leadership. So beyond the mindset and performance tools, we're going to get into the deep-rooted stuff here today. So this is beyond the stress management that I think so often we're talking about nervous system reset. We're talking about this level. And Dr. Alena is going to take us 3 or 4 levels deeper than that, I guess. Short, really, to that pattern that's beneath the behavior reactions and how those patterns shift. So welcome, Alena. So happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for having me and for that beautiful introduction. I really love your mission. I love what you're doing. So it's a real honor and pleasure to sit with you.
Oh.
And yes, I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Well, thank you. And you know how I was like, oh, let me pick your brain a little bit here, right? So I love to start with, because I think it tells us so much why you're doing what you're doing and really how you got involved in that.
You know, it's really interesting because the only thing I can say is that I have to do it. There's no other way. Looking back to my early adulthood, and even like when I was a teenager, I was always interested in well-being and health. You know, I was eating well, I was exercising, and so that was kind of the doorway for me to get into the wellness world, and then through yoga, my personal yoga journey and teaching yoga therapy, like I have a very scientific, logical mind, but I also have a really strong intuition. And so I just kept wanting to go deeper. And so after a number of yoga therapy workshops and courses and working with clients, I decided I want to be a chiropractor because that will allow me to understand the human system on a deeper level in a way that's holistic. And so I started studying chiropractics and I absolutely loved it. There was a lot of focus on the nervous system, as you can imagine. And when I started seeing clients already in the student clinic as a part of the curriculum, there was something I was seeing I couldn't understand that was telling me this person does not need the physical work. It's not the priority. There is something deeper. And so I was lucky enough to study in a very holistic school, and I started to go to all these extracurricular seminars on emotional resolution work and subconscious reprogramming. And it really resonated with me, and I started to implement it then after I graduated and opened my own clinic. And universe started to send me people with chronic illness that were struggling to find solution. And I started to see that when we unwind the emotional charge that's been suppressed and stifled, oftentimes from childhood, from early years, the body started to heal. And so that was really fulfilling, as you can imagine, and, you know, really encouraging. But at the same time, I was on my own path to my own healing and my personal growth. In my case, it wasn't so much physical healing, but it was more like, I think about it as a healing of the soul. You know, getting through these subconscious patterns, our conditioned identity. And I got to the place where I realized that when we heal the soul, when we just free the system from these conditioned layers that keep us small, that keep us thinking that we are somebody that we are really not, that keep us with these masks that we put on to survive as children, to feel loved and feel accepted and feel seen, the body just naturally heals. And so I slowly, or maybe even we can say quickly, but it was during COVID, transitioned fully to just working with the focus on deeper personal growth and taking people through the layers that are often so invisible at the subconscious level. And that's what I do now.
Right. So cool. Like Yeah, I love what you're doing. And this idea, I think we've always known, right, how much emotions and thinking contribute to health. And you're really trying to bridge those two worlds through what the work you're doing.
Yes, and one of the things I found, and again, I feel like everything starts with ourselves, right? Like our passions, what we do in our careers, was that I was so disassociated, so disconnected from my being, from my body, that facing emotions was really difficult. Like I couldn't reach anger for years. I was in denial about a lot of things from my childhood. And when I look back, if I was to tell you about my childhood, I wasn't traumatized. I had a okay childhood, but parents were stressed. The household wasn't always happy. I didn't live in abusive household, but trauma is not just what often people think about, these big things. Trauma is actually, I love Gabor's Mate description of that. It's what happens inside of us when life is happening around us.
Right.
And so for many, many years, grew up believing I had the best childhood possible. And because I was so disconnected, I needed to figure out scientifically what needs to happen for me to be able to start breaking through those barriers and through those subconscious patterns. And that's how I kind of came to combining my spiritual experiences through deep meditations and psychedelics with neuroscience. So I no longer need to go on a silent retreat that takes me from the world for 10 days, or I no longer need to do the psychedelic medicine ceremonies. I have the understanding of my inner architecture and the tools to continue to deepen without any of those external tools.
Right. Right. And really speaking to this sense of maybe once we get rid of some of those layers, right, then we find the system that works for us. It might not have been some of the systems we tried before because they were getting us to that next spot so that our own body could say, this is what I need.
Yes, absolutely. And if you look at the whole subconscious programming from the perspective of neuroscience, the main gateway is really our nervous system, because we all have a nervous system, and that's fully developed when we come into this world. Unlike our brain, that wise thinking, that logical thinking that so many of us are trying to use to overcome their patterns. Like I know so many people, including myself, we understand what we don't want to do or how we don't want to behave, but we can't overcome it because the logic mind was developed much later, after we've experienced life around us, and then we gave it this distorted meaning that is then creating those beliefs of self-worth and what's possible in life and self-love. And so the nervous system for me is the crucial gateway.
Well, and I just had an epiphany there when you said that, of the way you describe that, right? That our nervous system is intact when we're born, and we're just taking in information that's essentially creating our nervous system at that point, and the brain doesn't have the capacity to override that.
Yes, because it's not fully developed, that logical wise thinking is not quite there yet, and we don't have enough data. We don't understand life holistically. We don't understand that mom's just stressed out and that's why she snapped at us, right? We internalize all of these experiences that feel, I always emphasize the word feel, that feel overwhelming or feel uncomfortable. And then even though the brain's not fully developed, the mind still needs to give that feeling a meaning. And so that's where all these beliefs that are not conscious, it's kind of manifesting more in this feeling that so many people again are disconnected from, of these beliefs. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to rest. I don't deserve to be with the right partner that will love me the way I consciously yearn for. I don't deserve to have an easy, fulfilling career. On a conscious level, we all want these things. We convinced that we feel like, yes, that's what I'm calling in. But there's a fight with the subconscious, which is all about keeping us in the known. This is how I grew up. This is what's safe because it helped me survive. So I'm not going to let you get the perfect job yet or get the perfect salary or perfect partner, because that could mean trouble.
Right. Such cool stuff. See, now everybody else is going, that's catnip too, right? We understand what I said about that. So talk a little bit, because I love your book title, Grace Over Grit. And I see how this is coming together with what you've just been talking about as well. Is the overarching thing you would tell people about working with you is grace over grit.
Yes, yes. The book was born as this idea that I had of wanting to put a manual together to empower people about how the inner world, how the foundation of our psyche and our subconscious mind really works, so we can learn to work with it rather than against it. Because of what I described is happening in a childhood and the brain development, we actually as adults often end up working against it with the logic and willpower. I'll be more disciplined, I'll be harder on myself, I try to think my way out of the stress pattern, right? And so I always say we have manual for just about everything, but no one gave us manual for the most important thing in the world, for our inner world, that architecture beyond our psyche. And so I envision it initially as this thin, to the point manual, and as I started writing, I just couldn't stop. And I felt like the putting context around how our subconscious develops, how our nervous system learns, was really important. Grace Over Grit really was born, even the name of the book, and it's the name of the method I work with when I work with people in one-on-one, was born on this premise that if we know how to work with our inner world, then we can grow with grace and not grit.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I found always this example that comes to my mind. Like, imagine you an alien and you come down here and you meet a personal trainer and they'll take you to the gym and they have you work out. And the next day you wake up and you're sore and it's real and you don't know what's happening. You're gonna say, I'm never going back there. This could be dangerous, right? Like, I can't barely move. And I see so much similarity between this example and our process of unwinding these subconscious patterns. Because one of the pivotal moments where I started to kind of create this holistic method was when I started taking people through the somatic part of the work, and I could feel the resistance. And I could recognize it because I lived there. Like, as soon as you wanted me to feel things, I was like, no way, I'm good. Like, I understand, sometimes it was stressful when I was little, but no, I don't feel like it impacted me, I would say. And so that resistance was what really got me thinking, if people understand what that resistance is, if they learn how to meet it, if they understand that if we cultivate enough regulation at the level of the nervous system, and here I'm not talking about the regulation that so many people are using now, that when you stress, just take deep breaths, right? That's like what I call emergency regulation. I mean, this daily rewiring and listening to what's happening within the nervous system. Then we create a solid foundation from which it becomes easier for us to meet these feelings that are coming up. So we can allow the nervous system to resolve that energy that's driving them, which really is a survival energy.
Sure. Yeah, sure. At the root cause or the root base, right, is always that survival.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. How would you tell somebody who is not feeling, what is a great place to start, other than obviously to get your book?
Great place to start. Before I teach how to actually get connected with our bodies, because that can sometimes be very, very overwhelming or even re-traumatizing, I always encourage people to start to regulate daily, right? So maybe, don't worry, you don't need much time. 5 minutes a day, maybe you split it in 2.5 and 2.5, or maybe you go for 10 minutes of deep abdominal breathing. You don't do anything else, you just sit down and you say, I'm going to focus on my breath. Sometimes that may be even uncomfortable for people. So then we go into exploring what other tools can you do. For me, it was yoga, going to yoga classes. I didn't understand, Leslie. I didn't know why I felt this pull. Get back on the mat, get back on the mat. So maybe it's finding a yoga teacher that you resonate with and go and practice. Maybe it's listening to music or being in the nature. But I always say, do a little bit every day, because your nervous system, because of neuroplasticity, needs that consistency. It's like we encouraging the nervous system to trust us again. Every single day, a little bit. She's showing up. Here she is again. She's showing up. And then once there is a little bit of foundation, because we've been practicing, then start feeling, right? Like what happens in my body if I fully inhale? Is there part of my breath that is restricted? It's not traveling into specific part of my being. Am I breathing shallow? Is it difficult to inhale fully? Is it difficult to exhale fully? Right? Get curious and then start noticing what does it feel like when you get anxious or stressed. Where do you feel it in your body? Is your heart racing? Do you hold your breath? Just become aware of what's happening in your body at any given moment. And then from there, we can start kind of getting, or what I call befriending our emotions. Okay? A lot of the times what helps people is when they think of emotional state as a physiological chemical reaction in the body, which it really is. We can think about feeling in love. That's oxytocin. We can feel about being angry, adrenaline, right? Being anxious, that adrenaline, cortisol. So it's just chemistry. So think of all these feelings and emotions as the chemistry that the body has ignited that it wants to complete. And with that capacity that you build through regulation, see if you can start to allow for that chemistry to naturally fizz out.
Great. That's another beautiful visual, right? To really think about those things going on in our body as, and literally they are, chemistry. And really what we're thinking about long-term doing is shifting up the mixture, right? Making our own chemistry mix.
Yes, yes. And as if we were to tie this into how this helps with reprogramming these outdated limiting beliefs on the subconscious level, this outdated maladaptive nervous system function is if you think about encountering a situation that's stressful for you, for example, and you are able to get in touch with what the body is trying to show you, which is often uncomfortable, but it's just chemistry. If you allow and it's survival energy that's not being processed, it's trying to come to resolutions. If you stifle it, if you say, no, I'm going to get busy at work, I'm going to think about something else, it will hide and then it will come up again. So we want to get to the place where we want to allow for it to fully come up and witness it as the survival energy it is this biochemistry, because that tells the brain, that tells the amygdala, that fear center in the brain, and that tells our cognitive part as well that the danger is actually over. Whatever triggered this initial reaction within us, maybe it was being told off for bringing bad grades from school, maybe like that wasn't followed by this we call it rupture repair in this work, where mom tells us off and then she comes and she says, I just told you off, it's because I want you to do well, I love you anyway. And we didn't get that second part of the repair, that energy that started to rise, and we suppressed it because no one learned or was capable of holding space for it to help us process it fully. If we allow for that to arise, then our whole system starts to realize that I can let go of this. And then ultimately I can let go of the belief that I am not good enough, for example.
Right. Because that I'm not good enough is buried under all these layers of those times when we had that survival energy rise up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So cool.
Yeah, and it can be very, very overwhelming. So I always say, and if listeners get the book, they learn the whole process. I always say, visit with it. You don't have to allow for the whole thing to unfold, because for once, it can't often unfold in one session. But just visit with it. Just do a little bit, right? We call that titration and pendulation. And then ground yourself. Get back to your breath. Get back to your familiar surroundings. So it's just visiting, right? Like this is not bad, this is not trying to hurt me, but it can feel very, very overwhelming.
Yes, very cool. All sorts of gold nuggets today. So appreciate it. You know, I could go on forever with this because it's fascinating. I love the way you've woven it together and really explain it in very human terms, right? For some of us that don't have those neuroscience degrees but are intrigued by this. So you bring it back to our level, which is so valuable. But I also know that people want to reach out and connect with you. So where can they do that? And I think you had something you wanted to offer the audience as well.
Yes, they can find me via my website or on LinkedIn. So my website, and I'm sure you'll have that in your description, is Sattva with double T, sattvaintegralhealth.com. And there is a brilliant AI concierge on my site. So for people that are curious and up here, they want to know more, they can ask anything and it responds, I would say, better than me. So I encourage people to go on the AI and explore there. And yes, thank you to your mission and sharing all this beautiful work that you're doing and bringing me on, introducing me to your audience. I would be happy to offer a complimentary discovery call to the first 10 listeners that sign up for it, and I'll leave the link in your description. It'll be my website /powerful on purpose.
Well, that's cool. And I'm going to be on your website all the time, checking out the AI concierge. Say, tell me about this. So it's been a delight and a joy to have you on. Super appreciate your time and just great to visit with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Leslie.
Anytime you're welcome. We could always talk more brain stuff. So, and everybody else, make sure that you subscribe. I'm all choked up here, right? My brain isn't working. It's on other thoughts right now, but you don't want to miss any more conversations with powerful women who are living their lives on purpose and really changing the world for good.